Hey there, welcome to Maker's Greenhouse. Today we're going to be starting some seeds, and we're going to be doing that in two different ways. We're going to be doing it in a traditional tray seed starting method, and then we are going to be doing some winter sowing in some milk jugs. So to get us started here, I've got a couple of different things. Number one, I have my organic seed starting mix here. I got this just at a big box store. I think it was probably Walmart. I do prefer to use organic seed starting mix and organic potting soil just because a lot of that which I grow are things that we end up eating. And so I try really hard to make sure that we are setting ourselves up for success as much as possible. If you don't have access to that, or if that is not a priority for you, feel free to use whatever you have available. The seed trays that I'm using, this is my first year with them, and so far I'm liking them, but it is only January, so we'll see how it goes. But this is the Grow Ease seed starting system from Gardener Supply. So this one, the reason why I was excited about trying it is that it has a sort of a self-watering system that goes in with it, which is helpful for me because I work full-time and I have an amazingly kind husband who's willing to come out and water for me, but it is so much easier for me if I have a system that allows for a little bit more regular watering or maintaining the moisture level, as opposed to me, coming in and out and risking my seedlings getting a little bit drier than I would like. So we're going to start with this one today. We're going to start kind of a menagerie of seeds. Like I said, it is July. So July, ha! Like I said, it's January, so it's pretty early to be starting seeds just across the board. However, I like to get a little bit of a head start because, as I've talked about in previous videos, my husband and I garden on less than a fifth of an acre, so we don't have a ton of space. And I have found over the years that I can kind of cheat the system a little bit by starting some things a little bit early in the greenhouse or using different seed starting methods. Like right now I have some homemade hoop houses over my raised beds out in the vegetable garden space to kind of give us a jump start on our season so that we can have an early crop of something, bring it out, and then have time in the growing season for another crop of something. So I like to start some things pretty early, and I'm going to be dead honest with y'all. I just do kind of a trial and error thing because I have definitely started things way too early and been like, well, that was kind of a miss. This might be a miss as well, but it's what we're going to be doing today. So for our traditional seed starting, I think I'm going to start with a mixture of some flowers that I would like to have for containers and some in-ground planting that I would like to have pretty robust and the plants a little bit larger by the time I plant them out. And I also want to start on some herbs because I have a fun project planned for an herb garden, but I'd like to have some seedlings available to me that are a little bit bigger than what I'll be able to get if I start them the normal time to start them. And I also don't have any place locally that has seedlings, so might as well just get them started. So to start off with seeds, you can see here my seed starting mix. It's really good to start seeds in a seed starting mix because you can see it's super light and fluffy. It has a bunch of different aspects to it. You could absolutely make your own. I've never tried that. It's not something that I'm super interested in right now, but there's a lot of good things in here to set your seedlings up for success. But as you can see here, it's pretty dry. And you want to make sure that you moisten your seed starting mix before you get started, because what I have found is that, especially if it's super dry, and this you can see there's patches of like really, really dry and some that are a little bit more moist. But if it's super, super dry, when you put them in your cells and try to water them in, it can create these weird patches within the cell itself that either don't get enough water or the water just kind of runs right through it. So it doesn't set your seedlings up for success to have that. So we try to make sure that we have as evenly moist seed starting mix as possible to then allow for your waterings to be a little bit more effective. So what I do for stuff like this is I take just a regular old watering can, and I pour a little bit of water into this container that I have my seed starting mix in. You can use whatever you want to. This is a just like a nursery tray that has warped a little bit because I stored it incorrectly. Oops. But now it has been given new life as my seed starting mix container. So I just come in here after I put in some water and get it nice and mixed in. And what is really hard for me, I'm a super type A person and I love rules. So when I first got started with starting my garden from seed, you know, I'm reading everything and watching all the videos and everything, and it says, make sure that the soil is moist, but not too wet. And for me, I don't love vague like that. And I recognize that, you know, it might be hard to capture that in a less vague way. But for me, what I found is that you want the soil to be able to keep its form if you squeeze it like this, but doesn't drip out any moisture. So if I squeeze this one really hard, you could see drips of moisture. And that's because I haven't mixed it in all the way. But once this is fully mixed together and all the dry stuff and moisture stuff has been put into equilibrium, we should be able to have nice seed starting mix that can hold its shape but isn't dripping. Sometimes I like to do this with gloves on just because it's a little less messy, but I find that not being able to feel the soil as I'm mixing it, or the seed starting mix as I mix it, is harder. It makes it hard for me to figure out where we are in the process, and I find myself taking off my gloves to check anyway, so I'm just not going to bother right now. Oops, playing things. Maybe overfilled this just a wee, but that's fine. Okay, so I think this is pretty much good. As you can see, I can get a nice solid thing that shakes out pretty easily if I needed it to, but no moisture dripping out. So now I'm going to move on to the tray itself. I am going to set up the self-watering aspect of this in a little bit. As for right now, I'm just going to get this started. So what I like to do is I like to put just a little bit of soil at the bottom of each of the cells, like this. And then just kind of tamp it down a little bit to make sure it's evenly spaced at the bottom. And especially with these self-watering seed trays, I want to make sure that there aren't any weird air pockets that would make it harder for the trays to soak up the water from the bottom. So I like to tamp that down. But the reason why I don't tamp it down once it's all the way full is that I do want to make sure that we have that nice kind of airy matrix for the seeds to get their root system started in. And if I try to tamp it down when it's already full, I could, number one, miss some air pockets down towards the bottom of the cell, but number two, it could make it too compact and make it a little bit harder for our seeds. Okay. Just gonna lightly tamp that down. Make sure it's settled into all the corners. Ooh, there's not very much in that one. Okay. All right, and once that's in there, I'm going to fill it up just a little bit more and get it evened out. So you don't really need to fill it all the way to the top. In fact, I kind of like to have just a little bit of a lip in the cells as I fill them, so that there's a little bit of grace with the watering if you do top water at all, to make sure that you're not completely flooding it with just little amounts of water or upsetting any of the seedlings. I'm just going to fill these up. Okay, and once I've got them decently filled, I'm going to go through and just kind of settle the tops a little bit, and that'll give me an idea if there's any major disparities between the cells in the level of soil that we have in there. So for instance, this one, there's significantly less in that one, so I'm going to just kind of even the score here a little bit. And I use a little shaky motion to try and just settle in as much as possible, because even if you get a really high quality seed starting mix, sometimes they do have bigger chunks that can kind of catch the rest of the soil up. So we gotta shake it out just a little bit, get it settled in as much as possible, while at the same time trying to keep it as fluffy as possible so that roots don't have to work so hard to get rolling. All right. Is it perfect? No, but we're gonna roll with it. Good enough. Okay. Now that I've done that, I'm going to get a marker to put into the different sections so that I can remember what I've actually planted. And I think it's hilarious that every single year I do the exact same thing, which is I sit there and I think, I'll remember what this is for sure. Spoiler alert, I never do. So I cannot recommend enough making sure that you actually have some sort of plant identifier, especially as your seedlings are just getting started, because quite honestly, they all kind of look the same when you're first getting to recognize them, and so it can be really hard to remember what you planted. So for these are left over from last year, so I have washed them, but the last year's plant name is still on them. So I'm not going to worry too much about that. I'm just going to make sure that they are angled appropriately. So I'm going to get started here with a couple of different things. I'm going to start with Delphinium. So I have this here. It's from Burpee. It's the Pacific Giant Mixed Colors. This is a perennial, and this is one that I'm planning to put into the in-ground spaces on either side of the greenhouse. These are super gorgeous. They take a little bit to bloom, but once they get started with their blooms, they are so gorgeous. These will get tall. These will be between 4 and 5 feet tall. So they're really great for the back of a border or along a fence line or something to give kind of that showy backdrop for your other plants. So these do well with a cold stratification period. So I have had these seeds chilling in the refrigerator for a couple of weeks now. So you can cold stratify in a lot of different ways. The thing about cold stratifying is that I don't feel super confident yet on what all seeds need cold stratification, so I Google. I'm the queen of Googling. And if I think maybe it could benefit from it, I'll just check. Delphiniums are one that can benefit from a cold stratification period, and all that means is that the period of cold, not freezing, but cold, can help them germinate more effectively. So you could probably still get some germination from these, but my experience with Delphinium is that if they do not have that cold stratification period, I have struggled with germination. So my hope is that these, having had a nice cold stratification period, will germinate a little better for me. But my method for cold stratifying these was to get a paper towel a little bit damp, sprinkle some in there, and then fold it in on itself and fold it over a couple more times and stick it in a Ziploc baggie in the fridge for a couple of weeks. And then I wrote on the Ziploc baggie the date to pull it, so that I can remember to pull it out of the fridge when the time comes. So the cool thing about seed packets is that the seed packet itself should tell you all you need to know about how to start the seed. So for instance, we know about this plant that it's perennial. It's the Delphinium Pacific Giant Mixed Colors variety. Gives you some good information about if you sow it early, the blooms you may get blooms the first year. Sometimes with perennials, they will get leaves going and the plant will start, but they won't bloom until the second year. And that was something that was super bummer to me when I first got started, was that, oh my gosh, these are gonna be so gorgeous. I put them out and nothing happened. And I'm like, what did I do wrong? You read the seed packet, it's like, oh, by the way, it may take a year or two for them to bloom. So this is one I'm hoping that by sowing them as early as we are, we might get some blooms this year. We shall see. But it'll tell you which zones it's perennial in, how much sun it needs. This is a full sun variety, how many days to bloom, that kind of thing. But the thing that we're going to be looking at right here is this section that says depth and space. So this says that the seeds should be sown at about 1/8 of an inch. Now, you're going to learn very quickly about me. I am a wretched estimator. So we're going to give it our best shot, but I can almost guarantee you that these will not be exactly 1/8 of an inch, and that's okay. I have found that my guesstimation has been fairly successful, so we'll see how it goes. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my pen, and I am going to write on my, actually, I just got these, so we'll see what they go. This is a garden marker. And it's supposed to be excellent, so right on here. Civic Giant. Okay. Now, because I like to put a humidity dome over my seedlings until they get started, I know that this will be too tall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my snips, which I'm super excited about. These were a Christmas present to myself. I'm going to take off just the little end here so that when I put it in my, as a marker, it'll slide right down and the humidity dome can fit right over it. So, let's see. I'm going to do my rows this way, and I'm going to plant 2 seeds per cell. And there's some controversy that goes along to how many seeds per cell to put in. Because I have worked with delphinium before and I have struggled with the germination, I am going to put more than 1 seed per cell in. And that just, I feel like, gives me a better chance that I'm going to get something out of the cell. In that, we could circle back in a couple of weeks and you can find that none of them popped up for me, and so it was a loss in either way. But the worst thing that could happen is that you could have all of your seeds germinate and have multiple seedlings per cell. And there's some things we could do about that. We might cover that in a different video, but either way, to set myself up for success with one that I know is maybe just a little bit tricky or has been tricky for me in the past, I'm just going to do 2 per cell. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this. This is a tool that came with actually my very first seed trays, which are in abominable shape right now because I got them several years ago and I didn't have a great place to store them and they warped terribly in the summer heat. But I have found this tool specifically that came with the Seedling tray starter kit to be extremely helpful, and the main reason is this tool right here. This is called a dibber, and I have a bigger dibber here that I use, especially when I'm starting seeds out in my raised beds or in-ground planting. That works much better. And this one I love because it actually gives you the inches on here, so you don't have to guess as much, which I find helpful. But in something like this, this would be ridiculously large. So I'm going to use this little dibber for my seed starting here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of guess about how much 1/8 of an inch is. I'm going to make a wee baby hole. And then I'm going to grab 2 of my seeds. My big fat thumbs can, come on, grab just 2. You know what? These guys want to be friends, so I'm just going to do it. I'm going to drop them in. And then I'm just going to pinch over just a little bit. And I'm going to do the exact same thing in the other cells. And I'm going to do 1 full row. And this is another reason why I would maybe pull my gloves off if I had them, is that these are kind of hard to grab if you are wearing gloves. So my biggest advice with starting seeds is to read that packet because it's a little bit different for each seed type what they like. So for instance, some seeds prefer to sit right on top of the soil and not be covered at all because the light will aid in the germination. So in that instance, it's best to just sprinkle it on there and kind of pat it down and hope for the best. Others like a little bit more depth for whatever reason, whether it's the lack of light or a chill period or whatever it is, they do better when they're sowed a little bit more at a little bit more depth. So read the packet to get that information. And sometimes, for instance, one of the types of seeds that I'm wanting to start soon, if not today, are these snapdragon seeds that were held over from last year. So I gathered these seeds myself, and I'm going to be dead honest with you, I don't really remember what the specific varieties Snapdragon liked or what Snapdragons like in general and as far as how they like to be sowed. So I will be looking that information up. And I don't be afraid to do so in the midst of it. Nobody has to be an expert in this one. We're just all rolling as we go. Okay, so my Pacific Giant Delphiniums are in. I've got the whole row there. I feel good about that. So now I'm going to move on to my next variety, and my next variety here are these compact prairie splendor white coneflower seeds. So these here come from Eden Brothers, and I love Eden Brothers. I get a ton of seeds from them. Go check them out if you haven't already. They have a lot of information on the back of their seed packets, which I love. They even have a QR code that you can scan to get the full planting guide from their website, which is super helpful. These are also perennials. They are summer blooming. You can direct sow these or start them indoors, which is what we'll be doing today. These also, I believe, do really well in the winter sowing method that we're going to talk about later. But I have a couple other varieties that I like to start in there. So we're going to do these as an indoor. The plants themselves are way more compact. If you've ever done coneflowers or echinaceas before, I have some echinacea purpurea that I've done from seed, and then I have at least one or two that I've gotten as a nursery plant. They can get quite large depending on the variety. These are nice and compact. They get to be between 12 and 24 inches. So a lot more manageable in a smaller space, which is why I was drawn to them. They also are really, really cute. They are not quite white. They have a little bit of chartreuse, especially around the edges. And I just think that they're super, super cute. So I'm hopeful that these do well for me in my area. But this says that the plant depth for this one is a 1/4 of an inch. So for starting seeds, we're going to go a little bit deeper with our dibber. So I'm going to put these to the side. I didn't use up all of my delphinium seeds, which is totally okay. I can either gift those to somebody or put them aside for a different project. I'm going to get my tag set up. Snip off the end. Right now. Very splendor coneflower. Okay, and we're just going to do the same thing that we did for those delphiniums with the coneflower, just with a little bit deeper hole. These are nice because their seeds are, let's see if I can open these up without spreading them all over. The seeds are a little bit bigger. They're a little bit easier to work with. And these also can benefit from a cold stratification period. So these were pulled from the fridge around the same time as the delphinium seeds were. So these have had about 4 or 5 weeks of cold stratification in the fridge. So as you can see, there aren't as many seeds in this packet. And I'm wanting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So let's see. Do we have enough for 2 each? I think so. 2, 3. Pretty close. All right. Let's get rolling. I can also use my dibber here to kind of remind those seeds where to go if they get a little caught on the matrix. The matrix is damp, the seed starting mix, and so sometimes it can kind of grab them as you try and dump them in. But the dibber is a really helpful tool to get them right back on track. And I don't have quite enough to do 2 per cell. So this last cell, I'm just going to do the one left over. Okay, there we go. I'll put that to the side. For the rest of these, I think I'm going to do the herbs. Now, something to think about with things like seed starting is it's ideal to place in a single tray seeds that require about the same temperature and have a similar germination or time to germinate, because as you get these set up and ready to go, some seeds, and we can talk about this a little bit as we get a little bit later in the season, some seeds really prefer some heat to get germinating. So like when we get to starting pepper seeds or something like that a little bit later in the season, they like a heat mat or a warm place to germinate. And other seeds prefer a little bit colder temperatures to germinate. So for instance, I've got some sweet pea seeds that would not probably like the heat as much as some of the other varieties. So with this one, just because I have several seeds that I want to start a very small amount of, I'm going to be putting it all in the same tray and just kind of hoping for the best. I haven't done a ton of research on do they have similar needs or do they like the same temperature? And I think it's going to be okay. I may not get the most ideal situation out of it, but my experience so far is that has been, while yes, they may enjoy kind of being grouped with similar. I'm getting a phone call. Does that mean something? Okay. While these may enjoy being grouped with similar needed seeds, similar seeds with similar needs, usually they do okay, so long as they you keep a good eye on them. So I'm going to select some seeds that I want from my extremely not very well organized seed bin over here. Okay, so I've got my seeds for my herbs, and I'm going to be doing a bit of a menagerie of things. I've got some garlic chives, some regular chives, some Tulsi basil, some cilantro or coriander, depending on where you're from, some basil, and some parsley. So I have several sisters, and a couple of those sisters also enjoy gardening, but they garden in different zones than I do, or if they don't garden in different zones, they garden in very different environments than mine. So one of the things that we have done over the last several years is those of us who garden, we either will start seedlings for each other and kind of do a pass around to see if anybody wants them, or we kind of put our orders in early. So one of my sisters is wanting to do an herb garden this year. And so I will be sending with her with some seeds so she can start her own. But one of the things I'd like to do is have a couple of plants ready to go for her. so she can just pop them right in and enjoy them early. She is an amazing cook, and so I know that she could probably start using them pretty early. So again, all the information for sowing the seeds will be on the back of the packet. I got these from a lot of different places. Botanical Interests, for a couple of these. I love Botanical Interests. Super, super affordable, great quality seeds, and they have a ton of options. I've also noticed that they've been coming up with some super, super fun seed bundles. So if you have a specific interest in gardening, you can just kind of get the bundle and not have to think about it too much. Backstory, my very first vegetable gardening experience was with a Botanical Interest seed starting bundle. So huge fan of the company. I've had great experiences with them. So I've got a couple of Botanical Interests. I've got some Burpee Organics here for our chives, both our garlic chive and just our normal chives. And then I've got a Burpee Big Italy parsley. So I'm going to start out with the basils. We'd only need 1 or 2 plants of each of these. Let's see, what do they want here? So the seed depth for the Tulsi basil is 1/4 of an inch. So I will do the same thing that I have done. And I think I will go this way just to make the best use. Well, never mind. I lied. I'll go the other way. I'll just put them like this. So I'll say Tulsi basil. And another sister of mine introduced me to Tulsi basil a couple of years ago. This particular sister makes a lot of different teas and salves and stuff like that, and she has utilized Tulsi basil for some of her different sort of herbal remedies. And so I started growing it a couple of years ago, and they're really fun. So these are from last season, these seeds. And so the thing about the seeds is that the germination rate does tend to drop off the longer they go. I still anticipate that these will be just fine. However, I am going to make sure to sow a couple of seeds per cell. And these are mini. You see how tiny those are? So these are a little harder for me to grab, but I'll try to get at least 2 into each. I'm going to aim for about 3 plants total. I'll do it at least 3 cells. Okay. Okay. And then I'm going to not miss which it is. I can keep my hand there so I don't forget which cell I'm in. This is our Genovese basil. And this is my favorite basil for cooking with, putting on pizzas, all that kind of stuff. I love basil. And I have not had great success with keeping it alive indoors. So I'm just going to double check here. Yep, 1/4 inch. So I like to have nice robust plants ready to go for as soon as the weather is nice enough to plant outdoors. Because there's nothing I like more than a yummy basil salad or basils on my sandwich or something like that. Just screams warm summer weather to me. So, okay, so I'm going to do 3 cells of basil. Set these to the side. Next, let's do some cilantro. These are nice big seeds, so they're easy to grab. These like to be 1/2 inch. And this says to put a group of 3 seeds every 6 inches. So I'll put a couple more in here. We're going to go a full 1/2 inch down. Oh, can't get ahead of myself. Let's put the tag on. And then, oh my goodness. Whew. Cilantro. Okay, we're going to go a little bit further down. Put 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay. It's here, so I know where it was. Let me put it there. It is. Okay, put that to the side as well. And then finally, I'm going to do parsley in this one. I'll do chives up in a different container here in just a minute. This one already has parsley on there, which is nice. All right, for this one, they like to be 1/4 inch. I love parsley. They are not perennial in my area. However, the parsley that I sowed last year and have, I got huge, beautiful plants out of last year's parsley that I sowed. It hasn't died off yet. Our winter's been a little bit chill, so I don't know. We'll see. I may not need all this parsley, but just in case, I'm ready to go. I had so much fun using parsley last year as a cut flower filler. I'd never used it before, but it gives a really interesting texture into bouquets. Besides being delicious just as a culinary herb, it also smells absolutely amazing. So it was a nice experiment in last year's bouquet. Okay, so that's all that I can fit into this tray. So I am going to get the watering tray, or the self-watering tray, all set up, and then I will get these set over and ready to go. So for these, the kit comes with the seed starting tray, a little elevator, and these, sorry, this is not the technical term, pokey things, can also be used once the plants are ready to come out. There's little holes that correspond. You set them right on top and push them down, and the cells will come out, or the soil blocks will come out of the cells pretty easily. So I'm excited to try that out. They come with this tray, a humidity dome, and then like a wicking mat. So what they say to do is to get the wicking mat wet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill up my reservoir tray with a little bit of water. Oh, that's good. All over. And I'm going to get my capillary mat wet. Set my tray down, or my riser down, and then just set this right on top. So what the manufacturer instructions say is to keep the water level just below this. And I have found that they do indeed stay pretty moist. So like I said, this is my first season using these, but I have already started a couple of trays, and I have found that the capillary mat works pretty dang well. So we don't need to have it super high up. I did find that one of them, my water level was really close to being flush with the riser, and my seed trays are a little more moist than I would like to be. So no worries with that one though. The manufacturer instructions include that if they get a little too wet, you just take them off the mat for a little bit, let them dry out just a squee, and you can put them back on. So once that is done, I'm going to set my seed tray right on top. And then I'm going to just give a little bit of a mist to the top here to kind of settle in my soil and keep a nice, even, moist top for it to go on, or for it to germinate in, I guess, then to germinate in. And I'm going to set my humidity dome right on top, and then I'll put this to the side. Okay, so I'm going to start my chives up at a different time. Before I get into that project though, I do want to get started on our second seed starting method, which is our winter sowing method. Now, I've never done this before, so this is a bit of an experiment for me. Now, I've never done winter sowing method before, so this is a bit of an experiment for me. However, I'm pretty excited to try it. A lot of the garden accounts that I follow on YouTube and whatnot have utilized this method, so I'm just going to give it a shot, see how it goes. You're going to need a couple of different things. You're going to need a couple of different things for this. You're going to need a couple of different things to start seeds using the winter sowing method. You're going to need some sort of container that allows light in. So I'm using milk jugs, and I have already prepared this one according to what I believe to be the correct instructions. But yes, milk jugs. You can use water containers. You're going to need a couple of different things for winter sowing that is different than your traditional seed starting. Number one, rather than doing our seeds in little cells, we're going to be sprinkling them into a little bit bigger matrix using some sort of container. You can use a lot of different containers. Really, it's any sort of container that allows light to come through. I'm going to be using milk jug. Right here I have a couple different varieties of milk jug, one that I've already prepared and one that I will be preparing with you guys today. But you could use water jugs. I've seen people use like plastic fruit containers and those kinds of things. You can use a lot of different things. Really what we're looking at here is we're trying to create like a semi-greenhouse effect. So something that is big enough to create that kind of moist, warm environment where the light can come through and can germinate the seeds. So like I said, this one I've already prepared. And what I've done is I've put a few drain holes right at the bottom of my container and then sliced open the top a couple inches on the bottom just before the handle. So I've left a section here for the at the handle to allow it to open up. I'll show you a different container here that I'm going to be preparing with you guys. So I've got a cutter here, and I'm going to be cutting through, trying not to slice myself. Oh boy. Space, we'll see. Just a little further. Okay. Okay, so I've cut through and left just a little bit here to keep it attached. And then at the bottom, I'm just going to be poking some drainage holes. This is a little bit more of a sturdy, here, let me do it this way. A sturdy container than my other one. So it might take just a little bit more effort. Those drainage holes in. Oh boy. Okay. No fingers harmed. Okay, so this is the end result of what I'm looking for here, which is a container with some drainage at the bottom that can close and has a hole up at the top to allow moisture and airflow. So I'm going to be tossing the lids because we will not be needing those. Okay, I've got those all set up. Now, we are going to be using organic potting soil for this one. You can use a seed starting mix. However, I want, these seedlings will become a little bit more robust, and I want to make sure that they are set up for success as much as possible. Now, I'm going to be using an organic potting soil for this rather than a seed starting mix. I think you could probably use the seed starting mix. Not 100% sure on that, so don't quote me. But my thought process is that these seedlings are going to be heading out to germinate outside in a protected area and will be a little bit more robust, hopefully, by the time we're ready to plant them out. So the potting soil will have a little bit more, I'm going to say girth to it. I'm not sure how to describe it. The potting soil will have a little bit more nutrients and substance to it to hopefully set up our seedlings for success. Like I said, this is an experiment, so we'll see how it goes. So, just like with our seed starting mix, I want to make sure that the soil that we're using is damp but not wet. So you can see here, it's pretty dry. So I'm going to do the same thing I did with our seed starting mix. Get a little bit of water in here. And my experience is that a potting soil can be a little bit more aggressive in that sometimes I get splinters when I dig around in it. I'm going to take one for the team this time and do it without gloves because, again, I'm looking to be able to feel for a specific moisture level. But do not be surprised, depending on what brand you use, if you dig around too much in the potting soil, you might get some splinters. All right, I think that's pretty good. You can easily make patties, but it's not dripping with moisture, so that'll be good. All right, so we're going to take our container and we're going to just put some of the potting mix down into the bottom. A couple inches so that those roots have a place to go. And like I said, I'm a terrible estimator, so we're going with however much this is. Okay, and I'll set this off too while I'm at it. Good. Okay. I always garden with an apron on because I am quite messy. Okay, we have enough soil left over in our container for maybe another milk jug or two if we were to want it, so I'll set that to the side and maybe use it later. But what we're going to do now is we're going to grab our seeds and get started. So I have two different types of seeds we're going to use. We're going to use those pastel snapdragons that I got. Collected these from last year's snapdragons from my cut flower garden. And these are itty bitty babies. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place some on my hand. I'm not going to use all of them today, but maybe a little bit more. And then I'm just going to sprinkle them on top. Now you could be very, very, very precise in your sprinkling. This is an experiment, so I'm not going to be super precise this time around. We're going to go for it. Okay, there's that one. The other variety I'm going to be starting in using the winter sowing method are these bachelor buttons. These are, I'm going to say cyanus double mix colors. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but these are really spectacular. I have grown the bachelor's buttons before and they are just the most adorable things. I love them just in a mixed border or in a cut flower space. They're amazing for bouquets, but also they're just really cute, really fun to look at. What I have noticed about these though is that they self-seed really, really well. So if you're not looking to fill up your space, caveat, they self-seed in my area really, really well. I don't have a ton of experience with them elsewhere, so maybe that's not the case in other areas, but for me, they will self-seed everywhere. So if you're not wanting them to self-seed in your space, you got to make sure that they are deadheaded so that they don't sprinkle their seeds all about. But they're a really worthwhile flower if you haven't already checked them out. They're worth looking into. Really easy to grow. Okay, so just like the others, sprinkle these down. Good enough. And then there's several left over for other projects if we want them. Okay, so these, I'm going to tamp down just a little bit here. I'm going to just put a little sprinkle on top. Mostly because on the back of this, I do see that they like to be down about 1/8 of an inch. So I'll just kind of sprinkle it on top. My thought process is, if we were out in the wild and these seeds had dropped from the mother plant, they would kind of just be kind of resting on the top. So that's what we're gonna do for this one. We'll see if it works. The snapdragons, like I said before, I don't really remember what they need, so I'll figure it out later. And with this winter sowing method, maybe they would work better uncovered in this method where they would work better covered in another. I'm not sure, but this one is just for science, so we're rolling with it. All right, so once that has been done, you can use your mister to just kind of settle the top, get a little bit of moisture there. And depending on your area, if you get enough moisture at the top of this through rain or other precipitation, you may not need to water anymore, apparently. We'll see. This winter has been super weird for us, so we'll see how it goes. But the last step here is to close up your container. So I'm going to take some duct tape. Try and line it up as best as possible. Oh no. I'm sure that there's some crafters out there who are just rolling over in their proverbial graves with the mess that I'm making of this, but you know what? we're rolling with it. It'll be fine-ish, I'm sure. Right? Good enough. All right, so I'm just gonna get this as secured as possible. And I'm going to write on this using my handy dandy marker here what these are, and these are pastel snapdragons. Okay, I'm gonna set those aside and do the same thing with our bachelor's buttons. And I am sure that this would adhere better if this were cleaner and not quite so damp. I've had this specific container out here in the greenhouse underneath the plant trays for about a week. So when I watered this morning in the greenhouse, I noticed that it was picking up some moisture from the dripping of the seed trays. So it's a little damp, but you know what? It's going to be okay. Hopefully. Alrighty. That's sealed up on top as best I can. Sides. That looks pretty good, I think. We'll go with it. I'm going to put just a little bit on top here. Just, there's some gapping. No idea if that matters or not, but I'm going to give it the old college try here. Okay. Right here. Bachelor's buttons. So these and any other winter sowing jugs that I prepare for this year will be placed out in a outdoor but protected area. So I have a space that I'll show you guys that I'm going to put these, and they will just sit and do their thing until spring when the seedlings are ready to be planted out. So I will be keeping an eye on them to make sure that they get any water that they need. If we don't get enough rain for them to stay moist, and I will circle back to see how they do. To water them, I think probably what I'll do is I'll just use the mister and just put the mister nozzle in there and give it a good spritz if they need it. So that's what I've got for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed it, maybe learned something new. If you have any good seed starting tips, please let us know. I would love to hear what's worked really well for you, maybe what your challenges have been, and just to see, you know, what everyone else's experiences have been. Hopefully we'll have more on seed starting and planning out gardens and all of that as the season moves on. But until then, I'll catch you in another video. Have an amazing day.